Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. We get a lot of questions as we travel around the country about Roundup, and many farmers have noted when I spray Roundup on my Roundup Ready crops, it seems like the crop just stands still for a week or two. Is there something I can do to safeten that Roundup on the crop or lessen the impact that it has on the crop? We'll talk about one thing that you could do today.
We'll also talk about in-furrow fertilizer use both in corn and soybeans. How much can you actually use and still be safe to the crop? How much is this really needed? We'll answer those questions today.
We've got a weed that starts off very early in the season. It's our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop it because it may be big already on your farm. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to solve the weed problems you have in your lawn.
Unfortunately, Brian, sometimes theory is great and actually getting something done is another thing. The snow and the frost came too early last fall. I wasn't ready. I thought I had more time. I was going to get my weed control done in the fall. Now I've got some of those weeds that are still out there this spring.
Well, you have to do it in both cases. You need to spray in the fall and in the spring. What we want you to do is use a good, strong rate of 2,4-D, both fall and spring, and you want to do it at those times of year rather than in the summer because you could damage your trees, you could damage flowers. These products will move on you. Anything containing 2,4-D will move on you when you have lots of heat. So we want to spray early in the spring and again late in the fall.
Now when we're talking about 2,4-D, we're talking about broadleaf control. We're not talking about grass control here. Even when Brian gets a little carried away at that high-end labeled rate on 2,4-D, it can stress the grass just a little bit, but it's not going to kill grasses. So when you have issues, especially with the summer annuals, like a crabgrass, for example, or if you even have some foxtails out in your lawn, we can wipe those out. With lawn grasses, they're perennial grasses. So we're talking about taking annuals out. That's something that can be done. We like a product called Drive. Typically, we're spraying that just a little bit later than right now. We'll wait until we see the lilacs start to bloom. That's about the amount of heat units it takes for those summer annual and even late spring annual grasses to get growing.
So with this Drive, it's going to have some decent activity on crabgrass, but it also has some activity on some broadleaves too, and you don't have as much risk of hurting flowers and trees and everything else with Drive.
Let's talk about safety just a little bit. First of all, the safety of 2,4-D as a product. It's actually a safer product than the gasoline that you're going to pump in your car every week.
By far safer.
And safer than a lot of the household cleaning products that many of us have right under our kitchen sinks. It's been out for years and years. It has not been proven to be a carcinogen, so we're not super concerned about it that way. However, it is still a pesticide, and when you're dumping it out of the jug, it's very concentrated. So just use the personal protective equipment that you need. For example, when I'm spraying my lawn, I always wear rubber boots because I'm concerned that through tennis shoes or even leather shoes, I'm going to have some of that product soak through and soak onto my feet. I also wear long sleeves because I'm trying not to get the product on my bare skin. I'll certainly wear rubber gloves, and then I'll wear some goggles to make sure I don't get it in my eyes too. But just be sure to read the label of the product you're using to make sure you've got the right personal protective equipment, and then when you're done spraying, just immediately clean up your equipment and go take a shower. That way, if any of it got on you or got in your hair or wherever, you can wash it off right away.
Well, there are many other products that you can use in your lawn. It's just that 2,4-D and Drive are two of the safest for you. They're the deadliest to weeds. They're pretty easy to use, and they're very inexpensive. So that's why we talk about them quite a bit. If you're after grass control in your lawn, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of success unless it's something like crabgrass that Drive will stop. If you've got quackgrass, for example, you're probably ahead to just spray the whole lawn with Roundup and start all over again.
The other thing is you need to have a good fertility program. You have to get the grass that you want to be very healthy and thick and lush. Then you may consider also doing some aeration of your lawn each fall to try and help that grass grow and get thicker and stronger. And then when you're mowing your lawn, don't mow it so short. Mow it a little bit taller. Yes, you may have to be out there more often to keep it looking great, but if you're mowing it really short, it's just like overgrazing a pasture. As soon as we do that, we get all kinds of weeds coming. When your grass is really short, we have no crop canopy, and it's very easy for weeds to get started.
Well, speaking of weeds, can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Xtend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
I wish I could apply all the PK and micronutrients this crop needs at planting.
You can. When your soils are not excessively nutrient deficient, you can apply a whole season of PK and micronutrients when you plant and get top yields at harvest. AgroLiquid's exceptional nutrient compatibility and superior efficiency allows you to prescription apply everything your crop needs safely and conveniently. Research proves it. For more info, go to agroliquid.com.
You can put more bushels in your bin without expanding the farm with Yield Track. The new 24-row planter from Titan Machinery features the Case IH Early Riser planting system. Yield Track will take you to the field first with extra flotation come spring. The tracks eliminate pinched rows and reduce compaction. All 22 and 30-inch Yield Tracks come loaded with Case IH technology, including cable drive and AccuRow. Grab more bushels from every acre with Yield Track from Titan Machinery.
Looking to maximize yield? QuickRoots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. QuickRoots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. QuickRoots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your QuickRoots today.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
One of the great things about spraying Roundup on Roundup Ready crops is it's not going to hurt the crop, right, Brian?
The problem is it does hurt the crop in some cases. Now, nothing tremendously severe.
It's not the leaf burn and turning the crop brown like we see with some other conventional herbicides. What we're talking about here is a slowdown in growth.
Well, yeah, you'll see, but it's not just a slowdown. You can see yellowing, you can see browning. Have you seen yellow flash on your farm before? We certainly have in our operation when we go to higher rates, and now that we're having Roundup resistant weeds, everybody's bumping the rate, and then if you get any overlap out there, you come around the end rows, anything, we just see yellow flash, especially if your crop is already under some stress. So yeah, Roundup isn't perfectly safe because keep in mind, a Roundup Ready soybean plant or a Roundup Ready corn plant, it doesn't metabolize that Roundup, it compartmentalizes it. It takes it and shoves it down into the root system. And it takes some time, it takes some energy to do that. So again, we're not trying to scare you here. We're not talking 5-10 bushel yield losses.
No, and we're certainly not trying to bash Roundup. Roundup's been a fantastic product. Right. In fact, in our opinion, it's the best herbicide ever invented. It's been great for farmers. The challenge is when we spray it on our crops, they can only tolerate so much Roundup at any one time. And once we're pushing those rates, which we are now, because we've got some tolerant weeds, even resistant weeds, we're really putting everything we can in that plant. And so if there is a way to safeten the Roundup for the plants, it could be a good thing for crop production.
Okay, so the first way you can safeten it for plants is have a healthier plant. Raise the best crop you can, have good fertility, have disease control, insect control, great weed control otherwise besides just spraying the Roundup. If you do all those things, now you've got a much healthier plant. That's a good start. In addition to that, we always talk about throwing ammonium sulfate along with the Roundup. And a lot of people think, well, it's just to safen that water, you know, get rid of the hard water ions. It's not just that. Don't forget, ammonium sulfate is a fertilizer, and we want to help that plant recover. Well, if you give the plant a little more plant food, what do you think? Of course it's going to recover a little bit quicker. So using ammonium sulfate is another good step.
And the other thing which we've been doing now for a number of years on our farm is using something that's actually now a patented safener for Roundup. It's a product called Mega Grow. Now, I realize Mega Grow, it sounds kind of weird just to hear that name. but it really is a product that works. What we're talking about here is plant growth hormones, and we can actually influence the hormone levels inside the plant. So instead of slowing them down and putting the stress hormones on, now we can keep those growth hormones going in the plant. What we're seeing on our farm is we're not seeing that yellow flash Brian had talked about when we're using the high rates, or even where we may overlap just a little bit on some point rows or something like that. What we're seeing is those plants keep on growing right through that Roundup application and over the next few days. The good side of that is the best weed killer that we've got out in our fields is crop canopy. And when we slow down plant growth, if our crop wasn't completely canopied, now we've got to wait a couple of weeks until that plant really gets growing again, and in the meantime, some new weeds can start to germinate. If we can just keep our plants growing right through that application with a product like MegaGrow, that's a fantastic way to go.
MegaGrow is actually a patented safener for Roundup. And what it does in the plant, in effect, what ends up happening is when you put the MegaGrow together with the Roundup, you're going to see more of the good reactions occurring and less of the bad reactions occurring. Inside every plant, as soon as you spray Roundup, it does take a little bit of energy. You do see something actually happening scientifically in that plant when you monitor that plant. We just want to lessen the effects. And sure, even if the impact only lasts for a day or 2 or 3 days, whatever, the more we can keep that plant healthy and growing, chances are the better yield we're going to get. We just want you trying some stuff in your operation. We've tried it already on our own farm, and that's the reason why we're using it, but we're not sitting here telling you, oh, you absolutely have to use this. Just try some. Try some new technologies, and I'm sure there are going to be more new technologies coming along, but when we start talking about plant growth hormones, it's not this scary, crazy, wild thing. There are a lot of plant growth hormones now that have been proven to work very well in agriculture in the right situation.
Well, safening Roundup for Roundup Ready crops is a big deal, but we still want Roundup to be effective controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
At Case IH, our equipment doesn't just meet the standards, it set them. With industry-leading SCR engine technology, Case IH gives you more power while still meeting tough emission standards. In fact, the Steiger 620 is the highest horsepower tractor to ever come off the assembly line. And all Case IH equipment is agronomically designed to help you maximize your yield potential and your profits. The world of farming is changing. Will you be ready? Learn more at caseih.com/efficientpower.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's ahead above the rest.
For lower cost, higher production, see your Mandaco Agri-Dealer. Ask about the best production-built land roller on the market. Mandaco, simple design for easy transport to easy use. 12 to 85-foot widths, heavy-duty 4x8 3/8-inch tube frame, and now available with a steerable wing wheel. Mandaco land rollers, improved soil-to-seed contact, faster, more uniform germination, less moisture loss, eliminate downtime due to rocks. See your Mandaco Agri-Dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
If you watch Ag PhD TV, you'll love the new Ag PhD radio show each weekday on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. This is Darren Hefty. On the new Ag PhD radio program, we'll take live callers and provide the agronomic information and brotherly banter you've come to expect from Ag PhD. We'll feature a Back 40 segment where we talk to farmers and agronomists around the country to share what's going on with crop production. And it wouldn't be Ag PhD without addressing a pest of the day. Tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80.
We get a lot of questions all the time about using fertilizer In-furrow. How much can I use? What products should I be using? Is it safe? Can I use it in soybeans? We need to answer all those questions, Darren.
That's a lot of questions right there. When you think about in-furrow fertilizer, the big thing I'm worried about is I don't want to hurt the seed. I'm trying to deliver a portion of the nutrient needs of my crop, but I just can't hurt anything, so we're concerned about how much salt is in that fertilizer.
Too much salt kills. We talk about it often on Ag PhD. A little bit of salt, not a big issue, but if you have a lot of salt, especially when you're talking about a tiny little seed, that's a big problem. So we've got to be real careful about when we're using these in-furrow fertilizers if they have quite a bit of salt. It's not a real huge deal if we're getting some rain and, you know, everything kind of flushes through, but boy, in a dry spring, that's where we see the most problem.
Here's the question I've got, Brian. I talk to guys all the time and say, well, I'm using 7 or even 10 gallons of 1034O in my furrow. And I say, will that deliver all the phosphorus that you need for the year? And almost every time guys are like, well, no, I'm still gonna have to put more on here or there. Well, then why are you putting that much in furrow? Just put a little bit more somewhere else. Now, if you're off to the side in a 2x2, or if you're going with strip till and you're dropping some deep below the seed, I mean, you can do a lot of those types of things. Put some soil between your product and the seed. You increase your safety tremendously. But just don't put so much in the furrow. I don't understand that.
So our general guideline is in 30-inch rows, we like to see at the most 5 pounds per acre, so that would amount to of salt. So that would amount to 3 gallons of 1034O. That's it. We're never exceeding 3 gallons of 1034O on our farm. And if you want to throw in some micronutrients, like in our operation, we want to throw 2 quarts of micronutrients in, I'm going to cut the rate back a little more on 1034O. Now I'm down to 2 gallons because I've got a little bit of salt in the micronutrient package. So 2 gallons, that's it if you're throwing micros out there. And you say, well, I've been using 5 gallons or 8 gallons or 10 gallons for years and I haven't had a problem. Well, you haven't had a problem yet. Too many times Darren and I have been on farms where they hadn't had a problem for 10, 15, 20 years, and all of a sudden they do have a problem, and it's a 50 bushel an acre problem in corn. You don't want to have that happen. Why take that risk? Like Darren said, find a different approach, or instead of finding a different way to put the fertilizer on, you can get lower salt fertilizers too. That can definitely help, so you can use a little bit higher rate in furrow.
Well, there certainly are lower salt products you can use, like Pro Germinator and SureK. I haven't found lower salt alternatives that we could put in the furrow, and I'm using them at higher rates. I'm using them at higher rates than even Brian's comfortable with. And maybe I'm going to be one of those guys, Brian, 10 years down the road that you say, ha, Darren, I told you, there 1 year out of 10 you got burned. But so far I just haven't seen that. And you know, when you've got that low a level of salt, you've just got so much more confidence in the products you're using.
Yes, you have a lot less risk. So what I would suggest you do is keep that rate relatively low, and certainly you can go a little higher with ProGerm and SureK than you can with 1034O. But with every liquid product, every product you're going to put in furrow, there's a limit to how much you want to put on. So just don't get too carried away with that. And if you want to use more liquid, that's fine. Just put it in a 2x2. No big deal. If you want to strip till, you can go directly below the seed a few inches. Whenever you put dirt in between your seed and your fertilizer, you have really safened things up. You can use a lot more fertilizer. That's what we're after, because we know we have to have plant food if we're going to raise a great crop.
You're talking about corn, and the degree of safety with putting liquid in the furrow on corn is much greater than a crop like soybeans, for example.
Definitely. We got to keep our rate really low on soybeans, and I don't have any problem putting a little bit of stuff in furrow on soybeans. Some people will say don't use any in furrow in soybeans. We've just found as long as you're diluting with water. Okay, so let's say we use 1 full gallon of liquid fertilizer, a little bit of ProGerm, a little bit of SureK, a little bit of micronutrients, and then we dilute it down with 3 or 4 gallons of water. That's actually fairly safe. And we want to try everything we can to always keep it off the seed, whether it's corn or soybeans or any crop. Try to keep it off the seed. But again, same thing with soybeans as we're talking with corn. If you want to bump the rates, just put it in a 2x2, put it in a strip till, do it some other way.
All right, here's the other thing to think about is what is your soil type and what are your organic matter levels in your soil? If you've got good heavy soil, if you've got high levels of organic matter, your safety factor is much bigger. You can get away with using more fertilizer than you could if your organic matter levels were very low and you had really sandy soil.
Right,
so
and
you have
if
to
you're
keep those things in mind.
Right, and if you're in a high rainfall area too.
And you know, those things can change as you go across a field. You're going to have differences in soil moisture, differences in soil texture, and so forth. So just kind of keep an eye on that on your farm. If you're heading across a field, like we've got some fields where we've got really good heavy ground and then we've got some sandy streaks through them, be careful. If you're putting that same rate on all the way through the field, you could run into some trouble in those sandy areas.
I guess the last thing we'd mention, we were talking about in-furrow fertilizer here, but there are other products you can throw in-furrow too that really don't give you a lot of additional risk, like insecticide. Capture LFR, for example, is very popular. We use some of that on our farm. You can use something like Challenge 2050. It's a biological product. You can put it in furrow. Also not going to add risk for you, not going to hurt the seed or anything like that. There are a number of other biological products that you might put in furrow as well. So I guess what we're trying to say here is the fertilizer is really the dangerous thing. You just have to be careful, mostly with salt.
Well, fertilizer is certainly important, but so is weed control. Our Weed of the Week is coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Your farm tells a story, one that continues with the decisions you make. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our Weed of the Week is a winter annual. It is field pennycress.
Well, in the fall, a lot of times you will see that field pennycress rosette stage, where it's just low to the ground, kind of grows in a circular stage, kind of has leaves, not too unlike a dandelion leaves. And then in the spring, it will bolt up. When you've got a lot of field pennycress, this is one of the easiest weeds in the world to identify because it stinks. It smells like garlic and it's a strong odor. So if you have lots of field pennycress, literally the field will stink. And what I don't like about that is if you have cattle that are out there, especially dairy cattle, when they eat a bunch of field pennycress, and they will eat it, then their milk will start to taste like that garlic odor of field pennycress, and that's not a good thing either. You don't want to have garlic milk. I mean, it's hard enough drinking chocolate milk, Brian.
Well, field pennycress is so named because the seed heads kind of look like little pennies. Again, this is a winter annual weed. So the reason why we're talking about it right now is because it's been growing all the way since fall, and by the time you get out there to do anything in the spring, even tillage, this weed could have some decent size to it. So even doing some light tillage out there may not be enough. We wanted to talk through the control options today as well.
Well, field pennycress, one of the crops that I like to talk about control in is alfalfa. We get a lot of alfalfa stands that get a little bit thin, maybe there's a little bit of winter kill, maybe it got cut really late in the fall, and all of a sudden you got some pennycress coming through. Bucktril does a pretty nice job on field pennycress, and also Pursuit or Raptor can do a decent job on field pennycress too. So you have good options, but the big thing, kind of like what Brian was saying before, is you have to get out there early because it's going to have some size to it. You're going to need a full shot. So you're going to need that probably pint to pint and a half of Bucktril, especially early in the season. And then on the Raptor and Pursuit, you're going to need a full rate there too. Now that's not a bad thing because there's probably some other weeds out there too that you're going to get under control, but spend the money. It's definitely worth it on alfalfa. That first cutting is worth so much money.
Turning to corn and soybeans, we're much more concerned about the burn down activity here because this is a winter annual. We're not too worried about anything later on in the season if you get it under control right now. In a burn down for corn, I prefer Banville. You can certainly use Status, maybe even 2,4-D if you wanted to. Banville is going to be a little bit safer to the crop. And again, this is burn down before the corn even comes up.
Don't forget about using Verdict though. That Sharpen is so good in there, and especially on a weed like field pennycress, it will do a nice job. And then I should say too, if you're mixing that with Roundup, it's going to be lights out on just about everything.
Post-emerge Bucktril or Status would be good choices in corn. In soybeans for a burn down, that's where it gets a little bit tougher. You can use that Sharpen that you might in wheat or in corn, but you just can't use a very good rate. You can only use 1 ounce.
It's not too bad. Typically that 1 ounce is going to be enough if you're mixing it in with a quart of Roundup, something like that, to get a good burn down start. Then post-emerge, I do like Pursuit and Raptor. FlexStar and Cobra have got some activity too. We have a number of choices for field pennycress control.
Yeah, but don't forget Authority is not too bad on it, and even Valor not all that bad in terms of a burn down early on.
Well, on Sencor too.
Yes.
You could use, or I should say Metribuzin now.
Yep. When we take a look at wheat here, we would suggest Sharpen down, but Prepare really isn't too bad either, and Prepare is a little bit less expensive than Sharpen. Post-emerge, if it was me, I'd go with Husky because it's got Bucktril in it, but you certainly could use one of the Addition products as well.
That's all the time we have for this week's weed, but there's more Ag PhD to come after this.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrek technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
Will UAVs be important in agriculture? I'll give you my take in today's Iron Talk. One of the most popular questions I got this winter was about UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles, and their potential uses in agriculture. Like many things, the first few years of a newer technology are more expensive and a learning process for everyone involved. UAVs have been used for several years, and now software companies are coming up with useful tools to help farmers make sense of the data. I believe this could be an important tool for our farm and for agriculture, and farmer adoption may be big in the next 3 to 5 years as data management pieces become increasingly more user-friendly. We plan to use this technology in 2014 on our farm throughout the season, analyzing things such as plant stands and problem areas in fields. Getting a view from above will allow us to make better use of our time when scouting actual field problems. Instead of walking or driving the entire field, we can go right to the areas that need attention. How much will we gain in yield and knowledge this year? That's yet to be determined. For me, I want to learn what this new technology can show me. The cost of entry isn't that high that it'll keep a farm like ours from getting a UAV. Just like a yield map from your combine, though, you need to actually use the information to make decisions this year and for future crops. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Your equipment's ready. The seed's in the barn. You have a strategy to overcome the challenges you'll face, and your crop protection products are pretty well locked in. But maybe you still haven't finalized your fertilizer plans. If not, visit agroliquid.com today. With products formulated for superior nutrient uptake, unsurpassed application flexibility, and proven by years of extensive research, this may be the season to take your yields to the next level using agriculture liquid fertilizers.
Whether you're feeding cattle, milking cows, or baling hay, the work on your farm is never done. Which is why you need equipment that works as hard as you do. Get the efficiency and versatility you need with Case IH. From farm-all compact and utility tractors to balers and mowers, all Case IH equipment is designed with one thing in mind: getting the job done. To learn more, visit caseih.com/livestock.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling 0 downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
If you could see how nitrogen loss causes yield loss, you'd fix it. So fix it right, with the stabilizer proven to reduce all 3 ways nitrogen escapes. Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager. It keeps nitrogen in a more readily available form longer. With today's market and environment, it's a high priority to keep your nitrogen on track. To higher yield with Nutrisphere N.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for another Iron Talk, Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, and much more. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
No one cares more for the environment than family farmers who plan to pass their land down to their children. These same farmers are working to double yields over the next 15 to 20 years to feed the growing world. To learn how they plan to do it, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.